Meteorologist John Burchfield here. We're going to be talking allergy season. If your allergies have flared up early this year, you're not alone, and this is a trend that is becoming more common. Climate change is playing a role, and we're actually seeing a longer growing season and thus a longer allergy season. Because the amount of freezing and frosty days is decreasing, that is allowing plants and their pollen to thrive longer and really jumpstart early on in the year. So an earlier allergy season, this is a trend that you may need to get used to in the coming years. So let's start things off by talking about temperatures in particular and just how much spring warming has occurred in a relatively short period of time. Now, recently, the National Weather Service released new climate normals based on a decade of new data. The old normals span from 1981 to 2010, and the new normals a decade later from 1991 to 2020. In just the last 10 years, we have seen some striking increases in temperatures, especially during the springtime. The month of April in Toledo has risen by 1.5 degrees, and climate change has had a bigger impact on the month of May with a 2.4 degree increase in the last decade alone. This is significant, and when you compound this over multiple decades, you can see exactly why our growing season and thus allergy season is shifting as well. Now, nighttime lows have changed even more, and during the month of May in the Toledo area, there has been a 2.4 degree rise in nighttime low temperatures. Now, this is significant because typically it is the overnight hours and the early morning time frame that we see frost and freeze. So because of these warmer nights, the amount of freezing days and freezing nights is decreasing, and that's expanding the allergy season across the board. Now, this is a nationwide trend, not just something locally, but it's affecting just about everyone in the United States. In fact, one study analyzed close to 200 cities in the US, and it found that 87% of those cities nationwide have experienced a longer growing season now versus 1970. And when you expand that data over the past half century or so, boy, the impacts of climate change are even more notable. In the Toledo area, the growing season has shifted vastly. This is not only impacting those who suffer from allergies, but it's affecting area farmers as well, and it's having some profound impacts on our ecosystems, our wildlife, and our plants. In the Toledo area, the growing season has increased by approximately 45 days since 1970. So in the past half century, we have seen almost 1 day of an increase in the growing season every single year, and that is a trend that is continuing in the future. Back in 1970, we saw approximately 145 days in that growing season, and now it is up to about 190. And even though there is some year-to-year variation based on the weather patterns, the overall upward trajectory is hard to miss there using that line of best fit. And that is a direct impact of climate change due to the warming conditions, and thus a longer growing season and a longer allergy season. When you have less frosty and freezing nights, that means plants and pollen tend to sprout earlier in the spring, and the pollen lasts later in the fall as well. That is a significant change that represents a 27% increase in the length of our growing season, and Toledo is actually one of the spots nationwide that has seen one of the bigger impacts as a result of climate change. In my article, I explain just some of the cities that have experienced the greatest change, and I believe it is Reno, Nevada that has experienced the biggest shift in growing season, although Toledo certainly up there as far as one of the cities that has seen the biggest effects of climate change. We are really jump starting as we round the corner from April to May into the peak of allergy season, and tree pollen is one of the early culprits for flaring up those allergies, but we're entering the grass pollen season, and that is likely to be the biggest concern in the allergy department through the summertime months. By late summer and into early autumn, it shifts towards ragweed as one of the biggest contributors to those allergies flaring on up. Pollen counts are expected to be very high, and with the warming weather pattern, with these temperatures that we've experienced in the 80s this week, allergy sufferers going to have a bit of a rough go in the next couple of days. Maple, elm, and ash trees are the biggest culprits right now, and tree pollen is the predominant focus, although grass pollen is going to become more of an issue as we head towards the summer months. If you're not already subscribed to that Climate Friday newsletter, you can head to WTOL.com/email, and we have more breakdowns on information like this that we don't always have time for on air. Hope you enjoyed this breakdown of the allergy season and the link to climate change. And inevitably, allergy season does seem to be off to an early start, and we're likely to be entering the peak of allergy season as we inch towards the month of May. We'll have the latest Climate Friday newsletter coming straight to your inbox next week.